What's up, everyone? Welcome to today's daily market recap. As always, I upload my recap every day, whether it's a green day or a red day. Now, I'm sitting here today in the green, a solid green day, up over $36,000. So that's putting me up close to 100 grand on the week, and it's only Tuesday. Wow. All right. So clearly, we've got some momentum. The overall market, the S&P 500, we've got a nice bounce going on right now. So Dow Jones is up 1,300 points, Nasdaq's up 600, S&P, that's up nicely as well. So we've got overall markets lifting up a little bit. Asian markets overnight, they bounced a bit. European markets, they're bouncing a little bit as well. So, all right, that's good to see. The panic has subsided. However, I was wondering how that would affect trading today, since on Monday and a little bit last week, we did really well trading these kind of domestic first American companies, right? That was the theme. So it was a US company, small cap stock, and those were the ones that were exploding. JNVR yesterday up over 1,000% from $4 a share to nearly $50 in one morning. That's huge. So today, as I was sitting down, my thought was we should be focusing probably still on the American first stocks or domestic companies, that kind of approach, that theme. However, yesterday after the closing bell, we did have an Israeli stock that popped up, but with the I don't know, whatever you call it, sort of press conference that they had with the Prime Minister of Israel and the President of the United States, they were discussing a zero tariff relationship. And of course, the European Union said that they would be interested in a zero tariff kind of relationship as well. So now, I'm starting to wonder how much that muddies the water. With that Israeli company last night squeezing up so much, I just wasn't totally sure what to focus on. All right, so here's how I approached the day. Let's jump onto the screen share and start breaking it down. So that's the P&L right now, up 36,000 on the day. I've got one stock that I'm red on, and it's not a small loss. That wasn't so fun. But NAOV ended up being by far the biggest winner. Now we'll look at NAOV certainly, but before we do that, let's take a step back and look at our scanner here for after hours top gainers. So these are our top gainers after hours yesterday. So, oops, we gotta just sync this up again. So SVRE. All right, so SVRE, this is the Israeli company that put in a big squeeze after hours and actually traded it yesterday, made about 2,800 bucks after the close at 4:15 p.m. That's not when I'm typically trading, but anyways, I got a nice trade on it. This morning it squeezed up again all the way to 7, but then it's now kind of been unwinding all the way back down at $2. In fact, it's lower than before it even started moving yesterday. So you don't like seeing that. That's not great. So I checked this one first thing this morning, saw the reversal, and I was like, ugh, that's not great. SOBR, well, this one also popped up after hours, pulled back, came back up again, pulled back, popped up this morning, and I did get a trade on it. SOBR locked up a mere $322.36, a very small winner for me. That was a 6,000 share position, so I only made 5 cents on it. I basically jumped in and jumped out. So the way I traded this one was it halted up right here. It then opened, and I bought this little dip right here for the squeeze. It popped up, and then it rejected hard. So I got out actually some with profit and some with a loss, which gave me an average of only 5 cents. Then it drops down, comes back up, whatever. So a little choppy there, not shocking. That one's been tricky in the past. Now, GLXG was one of the leading gappers when I sat down this morning at about 6:30. And I looked at this and I just thought, I don't think I can trade it. It's got almost too much volume. So this morning right now, it's got 64 million shares of volume. And when I say something has too much volume, what I mean is that it's going to be too crowded. So, a stock that has millions and millions of shares of volume is going to have typically a very tight spread, a 1 cent spread. However, what's interesting is you can have stocks that are a bit more expensive where the spreads kind of thin out, even when they have a lot of volume. NAOV is a good example of this. This has 59 million shares of volume, and it's got a 10-cent spread. So in spite of a lot of volume, it's got a bigger spread. Why? Because the price is a little higher. It's a lower float stock at a higher price, so it sort of thins out the orders. There's just only so many orders that you could place on this type of stock at this price range. But then you drop down to GLXG and look at this. You've got a 1 cent spread, and it's not going to move quickly. It's not going to move down 10 cents quickly. It's not going to move up 10 cents quickly. So it becomes very congested. So my issue with something like this is that it's usually a little bit harder to make money on it because you're not going to typically get 30, 40 cents per share. You might only get 5 cents a share. And while it's true that you could take a really large position and that could be enough to make money, you still expose yourself to the risk of catching a flush, and it's just not worth it. So when I saw GLXG, I was like, nope, that one's no good. Not going to be interested in that. And so it kind of left me just sitting here wondering, all right, what should I focus on, coming into the open? So I ended up not taking any trades at 7 a.m. I call that the open, but it's not really the open. So at 7 a.m., I didn't take any trades. 7:15, still nothing. And then 7:30, NAOV, boom. So NAOV pops up, and I ended up taking some trades on this one. So let's look at NAOV. All right, so this one was really interesting because it started popping up right here at about 7:20. And the first thing I noticed was, okay, it's a US company, it's a biotech company, so I like all of that. It's even popping up a little bit right here. However, there's no news. I couldn't find any news. And what makes it worse is the 200 moving average was right here at about almost $7, $6.75, $7, right around there. And so when it first started popping up, I looked at the chart and I thought, well, it's coming right into the 200. And that was right about here. So when it first started to squeeze, I just felt like I couldn't manage the risk on that. There was really not a pullback. And then when it finally tapped here, the 200, I said, no, I can't get in right here underneath the 200. Oops, I'll go back to full screen. So let's kind of do a little, we could do a little, well, I won't do it yet. We will do a pop quiz, but I'm not going to do it yet. So this ends up popping up here and kind of pulling back a little bit more, pulling back a little bit more. And in this area, it's really not that easy to trade. So at this point, all of a sudden it kind of pops up here. And I said, no, see, the MACD is negative. With a negative MACD, I don't think I can trust this. And so it ends up going to 735. It ends up going to 770. It ends up pulling back for a second. I'm watching it and I'm like, well, I don't know. And then right there, the MACD crosses over. But at this point, because I had sat out on this first part, I was a little nervous about breaking the ice right there. So this thing ends up squeezing all the way up to 950, and I didn't take a single trade on it. And I was like, golly, all right, this is kind of ridiculous. What's going on here? I just missed a huge move. But the MACD generally keeps me out of choppy trades. I think the issue today was that, the overall market was just quite strong on a bit of sympathy from, some of the momentum from last week. So, or even just from yesterday. So anyways, it pulls back, it comes back up. So now we're coming up to, what was it, about 820. So I ended up taking a trade in this area. So we pull back, we dip back down, and we dip down, and then we come back up right here. And right in here, we end up getting a nice break through 845. Now, the problem again with this setup was that I was a little bit concerned that this wasn't, I still wasn't totally sure because the MACD, was not super well positioned. We pop up to 9, we dip down, we pop up over 9, and it's like a small trade. So I really didn't make that much money on it. And next thing you know, we're coming into the open and I'm like, golly, but I traded it at the open. And at the open, I made basically all my profit on it. And this thing just took off. So here's how I traded at the open. All right, so we're going to jump forward to the opening bell. So we're going to come up to the open here. So right at the open, I ended up buying at $8.89 for the break of 9. So I was looking at this level right here, right, that $9 level. This was the high right up here. And we dipped down, we went red on the first 1 minute candle. And when we squeezed up, we popped up here and then we dipped down. So I took my starter at $8.89. We broke over $9. And when we held over 9, I was like, that's it. This is the one. Because what I knew was the last couple of days, we've had stocks that have been squeezing up 500, 1,000%. Last week we had AREB. Yesterday we had JNVR. And now today we've got a stock that's already up 250% and is holding at the open. So I let it go red at the open. All right, I didn't know. I mean, it could have halted down. I let it go red. It curls back up. I bought for the break over 9. It breaks 9. It pulls back for a second. And this was the moment of truth. Is it going to hold 9 or is it going to break below? And on the bid, there was a buyer at 9. And it wasn't breaking below. Even though there was some selling, it wasn't breaking below 9. And so then right there, I punched it and I got filled at like 9:07, 9:15. And it immediately starts popping up. Because now other people are seeing the same thing I'm seeing. And I sort of saw other people starting to buy too. I was like, okay, it's holding. So then all of a sudden there's this sort of race to get in right at that breakout spot. So I'm in right there. And this is essentially, you could actually say that this was a micro pullback. If we look at this on a 10-second chart, it was right here. So this is my first trade right here, or for the break over, and then it hits a high right there, dips down, holds 9, and then adding right there, and then boom, we're at 950, 975, $10. And I'm like, yep, that's exactly what I was looking for, a break through the pre-market high. We go up to 1027, and we're halting up. Awesome. On resumption, we open, we dip for a second, and I added right here for the break of 11. We squeeze right up to 1150, 12. We dip down, we pop up to 1250. We dip down, we go up to about 13. And then boom, we've got some resistance. Where was that from? So I had drawn that way earlier in the morning. I drew it connecting these two candles right there. So you're going to see the two dots right there. And I felt like, well, you know, we had a little ascending support. So I watched that for a dip there. And then we got below it, and we were below it. And then we were above it, and then kind of back below it. And so I had just left that trend line there. And then we kind of came up to it here. So I wasn't totally sure whether it was still valid, but you know, I left it on the chart, and I'm glad I did, because we came right up to it, basically right there. And then we pulled back, and I saw some traders got caught in this false breakout here to that drop, which I avoided. I just was not sure. And then it rips back up, and I was like, all right. And then I got a trade in this area for the squeeze up to 13 or up to 15, but I only got small size on it, and I didn't really make that much. Because at that point I was scaling down because of the chop. I was worried about getting in a candle and having it drop $1 a share. So reduced my risk, and I think that was the right move. Now, meanwhile, we had SXTP, which also put in a nice move. So I'm up $2,800 on that. We had NXU, which put in a nice move. So I made a little bit of money on that. So it's like we had back-to-back stocks that were squeezing up today. Now, we don't yet have a stock that's up, you know, 1,000%, but it's still early. It's only 10:35. So I'm doing my recap here. I really am inclined to say that I'm done for the day. I have some meetings this afternoon. I've got some stuff that I'm working on for you guys. So I'm probably going to be done for the day and just come back first thing tomorrow. But, you know, if I see something that looks really good and it's starting to crank up to 750% or 1,000%, then I'll certainly be watching that. So let me remind you guys, our anniversary sale is ending in 14 hours. So any of you guys who are tuning in on YouTube who are interested in becoming part of the Warrior Trading community, I encourage you to check out the Warrior Pro special offer. You'll get to take advantage of our anniversary sale discount, but you also get 7-day money back guarantee. So you can spend the next 7 days being in the community, checking out the software, going through the classes, and seeing what it's like to learn from me and to be part of this momentum trading community that we've created here at Warrior Trading. So my belief is that you're going to love the program. You're going to have a great time. But look, if it's not the right fit for you, on or before the 7th day, just send us an email. It's a no questions asked money back guarantee. So we try to make it really simple for you. We want you to love being in this program. So I encourage you guys to check this out. And as we stand right now, you know, the overall market is bouncing nicely, which is good. We are definitely seeing some momentum in some of these small cap names. NAOV, again, this is another one that fits sort of that profile. It's a US company. It's a small cap biotech stock. These, you know, tend to be what I do well with, but I'll be really interested to see how this theme plays out over the next few days. If we continue to see US companies shining as we have had the last week, or if the theme shifts. But right now, with this up 387% on the day, it was clearly the most obvious stock today. It was the one that I by far did the best on, and everything else was just kind of breaking the ice and seeing if I could get something started. And look, if I could get something started, then by all means I can scale up and build a cushion. But it was a lot of kind of start and stop. You know, it's sort of a stock would start to pop up, but then it would sort of fade because attention was so firmly set on NAOV. That was the stock that everyone was watching. And it can be really hard when you've got one stock that's obvious for any, potential contenders to really gain momentum because, well, people have something better to trade. So that's something to keep in mind. But, at the same time, while NAOV is still obvious because the leading gapper, it's also up so much now that you might find it not to give you the best risk to reward ratio, especially when you've got these bigger spreads at this price. So it wouldn't surprise me if we do see a little bit more activity on some of these lower price stocks. SXTP up 100%, ZVSA up 100%. They may gain a little bit more traction here as traders are looking for something that's a bit more affordable and offers better risk to reward ratios. And that's kind of how I feel too. At this point, NAOV is just, it's a little too expensive. And that's the same thing that happened with JNVR yesterday. It just got a little too expensive. And then I just felt like, I can't really manage my risk on this. And it's not worth it. Even though today you got a 10-point bounce with the spreads. Well, let's just look at the spread on it right now. So, actually it's not a good example. So right now the spread's only about 15 cents, which is not bad, but then just look at how fast it jumps on basically no volume. So, a couple hundred shares go through and all of a sudden the price goes up $1 a share. So if you were short 5,000 shares of this right now, you just went from maybe being profitable to being at a loss with only a couple hundred shares going through the market. So it's like the level 2 is almost moving because people are moving their orders around, but actual orders aren't going through. When you start seeing orders go through, then all of a sudden it's, you can get a lot of slippage. So anyways, it's all about managing risk. That's the name of the game. And as always, I'll be back at it first thing tomorrow morning, bright and early, 7 a.m., streaming for members at Warrior Trading. So hope to see you guys in the chat room. And I'll remind you, as always, trading is risky. My results aren't typical, so please manage your risk, take it slow, and I'll see you bright and early tomorrow morning.